All right, so
Hey.
here we are. We have some amazing leaders within Cornerstone that we're so excited that are here for our worship Q&A. Go ahead and introduce yourselves. We already know you and love you, but just for formality's sake, tell us who you are. Tell us where you lead worship at Cornerstone.
Hey, my name's Rachel Anna, and I lead worship in Kids on the Rock and Main Sanctuary.
And tell us how long you've been doing that, Rachel.
Oh, wow. Probably 10 years, maybe?
Awesome.
Maybe 8 to 10 years.
Okay.
I was going to go first so I can say my name is Rachel Anna, but it doesn't work now.
That won't work.
I'm Harry, and so I am the worship leader over at Ignited, and I also serve in CYA and the Main Sanctuary as well. And I've been doing those, it's hard to say because they're 3 different ministries, and it kind of transitions like this. So I can't really tell where I started leading or didn't. So maybe three
a
to 5
while.
years. A while.
I've been doing it
Three,
for a while.
3 to 5 years, I think.
How long have you been coming to Cornerstone here?
Coming to Cornerstone for now maybe 7 or 8 years. 7 years. 7 years.
That's good. Rachel, how about you? How long have you been coming?
We've been there probably going on 12 to 13 years.
Okay, that's great. That's good.
So we have 2 different leaders with different ranges of experience as far as how long. And then we also have leaders who have a lot of experience, but in varying ministries. And so we're really excited to hear what you guys have to share, both practically and spiritually, because so much about serving within a team is serving in different settings. You guys have a great experience of serving with different age groups, both in the teams that you lead and who you're leading in worship. And so there's a lot of great wisdom that we can pull from you guys, and that we're excited for our interns to hear about. And so Rachel, let's just start off with you. Just, you mentioned Kids on the Rock, and you mentioned Main Sanctuary. Let's talk about first, what are some of the similarities? Even though you're leading young children and then you're leading all the way up to adults, what are some similarities between leading from those 2 areas?
From the Main into Kids on the Rock, I'm sure. First of all, I would say passion for worship, whether that's leading worship for adults or little children. The expectation of the Holy Spirit to move. Obviously, the Holy Spirit moves in different ways, but I know in Kids on the Rock, we've had some great times of altar time, and the kids are very, very humble. They're very open and humble. They come to the altar and they respond, and we've had some great times, altar times during worship. So I would say that, and keeping the excellence of Cornerstone, not perfection, but excellence, what we bring to the table as far as our team, the band and the vocalists. And I would say that we gel as a team. I mean, my band per se, I don't know, Harry might have a different experience, but my band's been pretty solid. I mainly have adults. We'll have a couple kids come in and start mentoring and learning how to play and those types of things. But my band's very gelled, and they love the kids. They love to worship. So, and in the Main Sanctuary, some of those people we've gelled as well. Even though there's different teams, we gel really well. So I think the chemistry of our teams are very well organized and coordinated, and we love each other. We're supporting each other. No one's trying to outdo the other person, and we love the excellence. Say too, the similarities is the flexibility to be able to flow in and out of things. You might have to change something up, like in Kids on the Rock, you might have to simplify things. In the Main Sanctuary, pastor may have a different sense of how we're going, and you have to be willing to move within that direction and be willing to be flexible with that.
Something I love that you said is, I think about sometimes when you're part of a team and you love that team so much and you're used to that leader, you're used to those musicians and singers that you serve with. But, when you move from Kids on the Rock to Ignited, it's a new group to serve with. It's a new leader to serve under. But as a worshiper and servant of the Lord, it's not about who you're doing it with. It's about who you're doing it for. And so having that
Exactly.
flexibility, like you said, and having an open heart to gel with a new team and learn a new dynamic and serve under a new leader, that's super important. I love that you said that.
And
So,
Rachel, you said that your band is typically adults at this point on Wednesdays, right?
Right. On Wednesday night, for me, perspective as the worship leader in Kids on the Rock, a lot of times we have tried to get children to come in, but parents' schedules, work schedules coming in at 6 o'clock has been a challenge. There's been a few, like actually some of the interns, probably like Lorelai, she's been playing and singing, doing a great job. Judah, Mason, excellent piano player. And I don't play the piano. I just say, you're doing great, Judah, just encouraging and those types of things. If the parents can bring them, we encourage the mentoring and the teaching. Brian Pearson, he's my go-to man for all my musical stuff. He's awesome. So I lean on my team. I know my weaknesses. I know their strengths, so I pull from that.
That's great.
So Harry, with your ministries that you've led worship in, what would you say that regardless if it's students, young adults, or main sanctuary, what are similarities that you see amongst those three groups?
I think one thing is to, at least I've learned within all the ministries, is to submit to the leadership and authority of the leadership. So if it's in Maine, Pastor Tim's the kind of the main honcho guy there, the main dude there. And, if it's CYA, it would be, Pastor Luke. And then when it's been ignited, it's been whoever, Pastor Ben at the time. And then now it's going to be Aaron and then whoever else. And knowing that, we're leading worship and we're kind of like in charge, quote unquote, of that kind of time to lead. But really, I think that the submission to that leadership is really important because, we're not just a segment that we're like trying to do. The worship service should be part of the whole service. That's the whole service. It's part of the service. And so with that, whether it's, saying I have some song ideas and talking to whoever's kind of over that ministry about what songs are going to do, what their message is about, I think that stays the same. As you want to submit to their authority, because if, sometimes there's moments where, I might feel like led some way, and I'll gauge based off of seeing, is Pastor Tim, is he leaving me? Is he giving me that room? And I know he gives me that room to do that. But sometimes he'll want to do something, and I need to be mindful of that. So the band, teaching the band to do that as well, that if it's Aaron or anyone else and they want to do something, they feel led by the Spirit, I want to respect that and honor that. So I think that's been something that's really thematically been important, is to submit to that leadership and to the vision of whatever ministry you're part of at that time.
So you may have different leaders, but having the same heart of honor and coming under that authority, just how no matter where you are, just having that heart, it's the same.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's interesting because it's the same but also not at the same time. It's like it could be both, where the heart is the same. We want to honor God, we want to honor the leaders and respect them, we want to follow the leading of the Spirit, but in the differences aspect, it's different because people are different. The way they experience it are different, and also the cultures are different. And so the culture of Maine feels different than the culture of a young adult event on a Friday night, or a Wednesday night service versus a Ignited AM service versus a switch service. For the switch, or doing a prayer night for Maine. So there's so many different cultures, and I've learned that you have to understand the culture, and so if you can respect and honor the culture that is for that whatever service that you're doing, that remains the same. It will be different. It will be different, definitely. But just having that mindset of you don't lead the same way. Like, don't lead the same way in every ministry and service. Because
so does that mean you have to be flexible with like the style of worship, depending on what type of service it is?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think, there's even, I think of like song choices even, right? With like, certain songs I will do more often or whatever, and like Ignited on a Wednesday night versus doing it at the switch. And then like with Maine, right? Because, your band choices are going to, your band and how full your band is, maybe songs that people are used to. I can't I can't introduce as many songs in Ignited on Wednesday because the students that are coming, I have to understand who's there, right? And if they're not coming as frequently or not there on Sundays, the repetition of adding new songs all the time, it's going to be new for them always.
Sure.
They're not going to learn them. They're not going to do those things. But I know that in Maine, people are more often going to be there more often throughout the week. You know, they're so we can do stuff. You know, we can do more new songs more often. But also the style, like I said, of worship. Like, you know, I'm probably not going to have really hard dance beats on every Sunday service. I want to make sure that we're honoring the culture of the congregation, and it might be a hymn, right? It might be a hymn. It might be it could be. It doesn't mean that you can't do that stuff, but just honoring, you know, the fact that people have different, you know, worship songs they might like and kind of preferences. And my job is not to show them the coolest music or the neatest music or whatever. It's to lead them into worship of our Lord. You know, that's what's important.
No, that's great. That's great advice for being flexible on style, the place, even the place that you're worshiping in, the amount of members in your band, even like if you're just playing by yourself with a guitar compared to a large band with an ensemble team singing, you just have to be flexible with the style that you're doing in worship and the song selection too. So I appreciate that. That's good. Good advice.
So, Harry, since you are already kind of mentioning the differences, let's go ahead and start this question towards you, and then we'll throw it back to Rachel. But you know, with our interns, a lot of them, they're already a part of worship teams in multiple settings. And so what do you want a worship team, or would you say a student or young adult stepping into Ignited, what's the culture that you want them to step into versus, hey, maybe on a family Sunday, a student who's stepping in or a young adult stepping in for the first time, what can you tell them? What should they expect that's different between Ignited and then Maine? What's going to be one of the biggest differences?
I think one of the biggest differences that I notice between young adults and up, regular, like just adults, young adults, and then students is, especially on a Wednesday, because we have a lot of students that aren't raised in church. They don't go to church frequently. If they do, they might come, you know, for different reasons, and they may not be saved. They may not know, you know, all the lingo, right? And so you have to be really mindful about the fact that the people that are at Ignited, or, you know, at least for us in our ministry, they don't know the songs that, you know, they don't know all the lingo. When you're like, even in between two songs and you're going to pray about something or talk about something, you got to be careful about what you say, because they may not understand it. And we want to make sure that they understand that. Right. And so there's such a difference there. And I think for me, it was hard initially, just starting out, was people are distracting. They may not want to worship. They may be talking to each other. They may not be lifting their hands. They might mock you, and you just have to worship God. You just have to worship God. In Maine, it's almost kind of nice, because people are like, when you're like, "Kate, lift your hands," people are like, "Oh, go to the altar," you know, like they're ready to worship. But in Ignited, you say lift your hands, and then one person does, and everyone else like is not. It can be discouraging as a leader. So I think the difference is learning to worship God regardless, and learning to lead the people that want to be led, and trying to pull people in a graceful way, in a loving way. And, you know, I've had to stop and say, "Hey, can you guys stop that in the middle of something?" Because they're distracting. And so finding that balance is hard, and it's having a lot of grace, having a lot of patience, but then just remembering you just got to worship God genuinely and wholeheartedly, regardless of what things are going on around you.
That's good.
Rachel, do you see that in Kids on the Rock, just with the age of the students, where just your expectation for their level of pressing in is different from your expectation? You know, you said you still want to have that sensitivity to the Spirit, encouraging them to press in, but how does that look for you as a leader in those different areas?
Well, definitely. I may not have the mocking that goes on as Harry does, because he's dealing with teenagers and young adults. But there are kids that will, you know, they'll giggle or whatever. I've seen them, like, if I'm really getting at it, they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, she's going at it." But I think I agree with Harry, just keeping the focus on the Lord. And I feel like as I've grown in Kids on the Rock, the one thing I've learned is that these kids, this may be the only Jesus they see for the week. And so but they're going to be that small group of kids that they're going to be engaged, and their lives are being changed. Whether it's in that moment, I could be the water, or I could be the seed, or I'm the one that's planting. It just depends on what God's doing and moving in the Spirit. And that's what draws me to Kids on the Rock. I never thought that I would never say, if I would have been looking, a few years ago, I wouldn't have said kids ministry. I'd have been like, I don't think so. I don't think I'm called that way. But I love those kids. I love to see them worship, and you do have to be aware of your audience. You have to be aware of, sometimes there's a song and okay, I'm losing them here, and I've stopped before and had to kind of rally them back in. And then there's times when they're singing louder than me, and I'm like, this is amazing, this is awesome. And the precious moments of them down at the altar, and they may not even really know what they're doing, but it's the practicing, it's they're willing to come down, they're listening to instructions. So I feel like myself and the team that's there, that's also leading, like Brian and Almani and some of the other adults that are in there working the children do when they get older, when they go to the main stage, and when they go into Ignited, and what to expect. And so I feel like we're passing the baton, so to speak. But we do have to be very careful about song selection. Like there's a lot of songs I don't pull over from the main sanctuary into Kids on the Rock, because it doesn't work. Like if it's really wordy or it's real deep, sometimes I won't pull those songs over. And then we try to be sensitive to Becky in regards to wanting to pull in more children's songs. So I've been trying to work with Josh, and Josh is kind of heading that team now, and he's really pulling in, before COVID obviously, but we're still trying to pull some really cool kids songs that they'll be more engaged. They like the songs from the main sanctuary, and I think that's good that we keep that, because it's all unified. What's coming from the main sanctuary, I think, needs to be, in some instances, in every aspect of ministry, in Ignited, CYA, and then in a Kids on the Rock. Then you'll have your few songs that are just dedicated to those ministries. But I think overall the theme has to be kind of woven in between your ministries.
Yeah. I used to think when I was in Kids on the Rock, you don't know who you're touching, but the Lord knows. And even if the kids aren't really engaged during that time, listening, and they're getting the word into their heart, and they're learning how to worship, and they're learning to try to understand what it means to worship the Lord. And you just never know who you're touching, speaking to just indirectly, until you see them years later, and they thank you for doing that, and just helping them to understand what it means to worship. Just say, pressing on,
Yeah, and the other thing too, on Wednesday night, I'm in there the whole time, so I'm not just some worship leader that walks in and walks out. Right. I'm engaging with them. I want to know how they're doing. I ask about school, and we do the rock wall, and they know me. I'm saying I give them snack. I talk to them on more than a level of just worship. Like, she's just standing up there, she doesn't really care about me. I mean, there's been times when I felt the presence of the Lord, I just let the band play, and they were down at the altar. I just went down and I just started laying hands on them, because I felt led to do that, because and it was just a real tender moment. Those are the things that the Holy Spirit, just to be able to do those things, is just, it's a legacy for me. I hope that through these things that the interns will grab a hold of that and say, that's my goal. That's what I want to do. And that's what I want to cultivate in my own life, because God will use it.
That's good.
You don't have to be stellar at anything. You don't have to be the greatest. You just have to have a willing heart and be an open vessel for the Lord to use you.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Something that you said that I loved, Rachel, that I feel like is so key, is you just said how much you love those kids. You never thought you'd be in children's ministry, but man, I feel like when you love the people that you're serving with and the people that you are serving, that keeps you going. I think we can get burned out when we're serving in a ministry, maybe like Ignited, where you don't see kids entering into worship week after week and you can get discouraged. But if you love those kids, and if the Lord breaks your heart for your peers or for that generation, whether it's young people or all the way up to adults, that keeps your heart healthy. That keeps you going. When you can look out in that crowd of, God, whether they're worshiping or not, I just have a heart to see them connect with the Lord, and I'll do it week after week after week because I love you and you've given me a heart for these people that I'm serving and leading. And so that's huge, Rachel, just to have a heart for those that you're serving.
Right. And you may never see the result of that until we all get to heaven. And then people are going to come up to you and go, hey, I remember a service or whatever, and Harry's going to be the same way. I mean, maybe I might see a little bit more of the fruit than he does because I'm dealing with younger children that are more open, but the fruit of what we're doing, we may not see it right at the moment, but God sees it.
Yeah.
He knows what's going on.
Yeah, I think I really, just what you guys are talking about is really good, because I think it's really important to understand. I feel like I caught this early on in kind of being part of the ministries, and Jen, you were, you led a lot of those, and Rob, and I really caught it early on that, worship ministry really extends beyond the platform, so much beyond the platform. I think it's interesting because the platform is a ministry, that worship ministry, leading worship, is a ministry where you're on a platform and people see you and you're using your talents, but it's not about your talents, even though you want to be excellent and you're using them. And the thing is, regardless of the fact of, like, if you're trying to be humble or whatever else, and like, you are using your gifts and people see them, and people will be attracted to that, and it's just an influence thing because they see you playing. It's just a natural, like, human tendency to see, like, oh, that's cool. Then utilizing the influence that people are going to look and say things. They're going to say, hey, great job, we love this, whatever. They're going to look at you and like, oh, and not that we want to be on a pedestal, but they kind of will. People will do that. But it's a chance for you to show the glory of God, to say, okay, you may be seeing my gifts or my talents when I'm leading, whatever, but I want to point you to the Lord. And stepping off the platform and still being in a mindset of, I'm a person, I'm human, I can connect with you, I want to meet you, I want to know your name, I want to talk to you. That has been so key, because worship ministry has been a great entry point of really discipleship ministry. Discipling not just students in Ignited, like on the worship team, because that's a really important aspect of it, but also on the other side is, when people are in a connect group that I'm going to now, or I'm leading, they know I'm also a worship leader, but I'm also talking to them about, the Bible or the message and whatever else. You build this relationship that over time, you're connecting with them spiritually when you're talking about problems or whatever else off the platform. And then when you're leading, now you're leading them personally in worship, and they don't see you as some figure up there. They see you as just a person that is also leading worship. And I think that's really key, is really breaking down that wall that can kind of probably be put up by the platform.
Yeah. So people see your heart, not just that you can play guitar, but they know you. And then when you're in worship, and then you're asking them, let's just raise our hands and let's just worship the Lord. Even little things like that, because they know you, they're going to follow you and do what you're asking, just because they know your heart. They know that you're not trying to be some, super famous rock star or anything, but you just want to worship the Lord. Let's worship together as a church body. And because they know who you are, they're going to follow what you're asking them to do, which is great.
So Harry, you kind of mentioned this before, but maybe you can give us just a brief perspective going into the very different settings that you can lead worship in. Like you said, there's like Wednesday night, there's the switch. You've led worship at our Dream Team rally, just one song of worship where there's a bunch of volunteers. What can you give as like advice, or like how do you think going into switch worship, how does that differ from Wednesday night? Song selection, you can dive into as much detail or just little as you like, but kind of give us an idea of how do you go about different settings and set lists for those worship opportunities.
So I think it's like kind of was talking about honoring the culture. There is almost always a culture that can happen or is already there in some service, right? So in the switch has been around since before me, and so there's kind of a culture of, one, people that are coming to the switch are usually ready. They're ready to worship. They're ready to be there. They want to go all in. And in those kinds of moments, where there's no lyrics, what they can look off of and things like that, you're thinking about, okay, what makes it easy for everyone to worship together in a way that they can repeat on a chorus, whatever. It's a simple like acoustic set. It's usually one or two people, maybe three people. What's easy to transition in between songs. So that's one side of it, of like thinking from the culture of the switch is, it's simple worship. It's usually very powerful because everyone's singing. So what are the things that people can sing? I'm not going to go like super high, with the vocals, or super low and like do a bunch of runs, because I want everyone to be singing, right? And you always want that, but in like a switch environment, it's really important. But then you go into like if you're leading on the platform, and you have lyrics, and you have a set structure that's a little bit more, you want to try to fit it in between before service, whatever. It's not as much freedom not necessarily not as much freedom, but there's a little bit more of a time scale. It's just, I guess, is understanding the heart of the culture, right? So of what is, I guess, has already happened in the past. I'm not saying that you can't change it or try something new, but it's different. So acoustic, I would say, like, make it simple. If it's just you or if someone else and you don't have a click and all that, make it easy to lead so you can switch between songs easily. So a lot of times what I'll do is, for the switches, I might have 4 or 5 songs. I might even have 7 ready. Maybe it's chorus of this, chorus of this, chorus of this, but they're songs that are really familiar. So choosing familiar songs, and I might keep them in close keys or similar keys or the same key, so that you can just switch as you need to. Because there's so many moments where you might want to linger and you might stay in a key, and you might think, oh man, right now the Lord's speaking me to sing this song, or maybe even to sing out, right? And have a little bit more of that time. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I would say other worship settings, like a SIA event, or maybe Ignite on a Wednesday, or a big like Moto Fest kind of like thing or whatever. Like, usually those are very hype. And so part of it is structuring the set to have a kind of flow. And so the flow would be, and a lot of times you'll hear it, it's like the first song is always the fast song, one fast song, one medium song, one slow song. But it's to kind of build the energy. Like, when you're coming into worship, a lot of times that first song is let's gather, let's celebrate, it's awesome. You want that energy, you get people loosened up, maybe even a little tired, but then transitioning slowly to, medium song, slow song, because now people are starting to engage. And it's just, it helps transition to maybe like a prayer time. So knowing what is coming up is important. So, if you know that you want to have a prayer time, you want to make sure that you're engaging in a way that you're not jumping from really fast song, and then in the middle of it, you stop, you're like, okay, let's pray.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the slow, like ambient prayer, like that doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So just song flow from a perspective of what is your order service and kind of looking like. So those are some tips. I don't know if those are good.
No, it's great.
No, it's good. Yeah, knowing the expectation, knowing the culture, knowing the flow, knowing the time restraint, knowing what kind of ministry needs to take place, like prayer, or is it celebrating? And so all those things are huge.
Yeah.
So, well, I can think, Rob, maybe you have one more question after this, but this is kind of my last question that I want to throw at you guys. But you guys, Rachel and Harry, you have both been the leaders, you know, over a worship service, but then you've also had the opportunity to have young people step into the team and to give them opportunity, whether it's serving or if it's even leading and you're following and supporting. And sometimes that's intimidating for a young person to serve alongside people who are more experienced or older, honestly. Sometimes age can just be an intimidating factor for a new member to a worship team or a younger member of a worship team. So what would you say to the young person who maybe feels, you know, they're a little unsure, a little uncertain of leading or serving alongside someone who's older than them and has a lot of experience? What do you want them to know, or what can encourage them maybe when they might feel a little bit unsure about themselves? Rachel, do you want to answer first?
Sure. What I would say is give them a lot of grace, a lot of mercy, show them love and kindness, make them feel right away a part of the team. Even if, and you're going to have to give, like, especially in Kids on the Rock, it's a little bit more relaxed setting. So it allows for, not that we're saying, okay, you can make mistakes, but if you make a mistake, it's all cool. We're you know, you're covered in grace. And then we want to let your talent shine. And so when someone comes in new, I probably like a little mother hen. I probably hover a little bit, like, how you doing? You're doing great. You know, and they could be like, I don't even know what I'm doing, but it's okay. And then Brian is awesome because he was a music teacher for middle schoolers. So he's great. Like he'll come over and help somebody on the keyboard if they're having trouble with the, and he'll play. He goes, they'll try playing it like this, or if you can't play it like this, play it. He'll simplify it. And that's awesome. And then if somebody's learning guitar, they might just play without being amplified, so they can feel more comfortable. And then the main leader will stand next to them and kind of help them, and then they can look and follow the chords. That's what's so beautiful about Kids on the Rock. It's a start, especially if you're leading, if you want to lead worship, if you want to play the keyboard or play any type of instrument. It's a great place. It's a place where no judgment. You can come in, you can learn, grow, and use that for the Lord and for the kingdom. I know Rob started it. He was great at mentoring and teaching. And we want to continue that culture. And I think Josh has been trying to do that as well. I do it more vocally than I necessarily can't. I can encourage them with my words of kindness and showing them being a part of the team. As far as like helping them with their instrument, I would be lacking that, but showing them love, showing them that they're a part, and I think holding back criticism, be very careful of criticism. You know, you don't want to be harsh in what you're saying, or you try to, if you need to make a correction, don't do it so publicly that they would feel embarrassed. I mean, it's very careful as knowing their spirit, and especially with young people, they're very impressionable, and just being, very cautious of their heart, and just wanting to preserve that and making sure that they wouldn't get offended at all, and just doing it in love.
So showing a lot, they're going to be shown a lot of grace, a lot of love. There's team members there to support them. We want them to just grow in their talent and their gift, and so it's a safe place for them to step out, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right.
I would recommend Kids on the Rock to anyone that's wanting to do any type of leadership
plug.
Yeah, it's a plug for Kids on the Rock.
All right. What, Harry, what would you want a young person to know stepping into a team?
I think stepping into a team, one thing to do is, I would say, ask questions. It's okay to ask questions. I think I will say it was, for me, it was kind of the inverse, where I'm an older person stepping into a team that all the younger students and all the younger people knew way more than me about leading, about worshiping. They had already done it. They had been leading or something. So it was a very humbling experience. But I just had to learn to ask questions and learn to watch and observe and know that, like, you know, I'm part of a team. And it's so awesome because it is very much that you're not by yourself. And I think when you feel by yourself, you can feel nervous and shy, and that, like, oh, if I'm leading, even, right, I'm leading by myself. But I think even being like in Maine, right, one of the one of the things I love about being, like, if I'm singing and, like, say the front, and I could be leading a service, I know if for something I mess up or whatever, I can hear usually the two other singers and other singers singing the right words. They got my back, right? So I feel the same way. Like, know that, like, your team has your back. Your team has your back. You know, worship. I think in a team like baseball, whatever else, it's all about teamwork. But there is a little bit of that, like, competition of, like, oh, am I better or whatever than the player next to me, even though he's on my team. And worship, leading a team or being on a worship team, like, we're there to worship God. We're there with a lot of grace and a lot of love, and everyone else has been in the same position.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what I've learned a lot, because I was in the position, and then I see people doing what I do. I'm like, okay, I was in the position, I could tell them that same thing. So, you know, just ask questions. Ask questions. And if you're uncomfortable, tell somebody. I think it's good to be stretched, but it's also okay to tell people that you're uncomfortable. So
That's good.
Very true. Very true.
That's good. Well, man, great stuff. I feel like we could go much longer and talk about many more things when it comes to these different ministries that you guys serve and lead. And so, Rob, do you have any other just final questions, or you feel like things that they could share with us?
I was just thinking, just maybe a comment, not a question, but just to kind of just go off of that last question. One of the things that I love to tell the younger generation, or, you know, new musicians just in general, is just it's a safe place. You know, we need to allow people to fail so that they can learn the next time. And it's really, that's on us as leaders to allow them to give grace if there's a mess up. You know, people are going to mess up. I mess up all the time. But we need to allow that to happen so that we can learn to grow forward and to get better. That's the only way you're going to learn is to get better. But I also tell the younger generation too to not copy people.
That's good.
You're going to need to copy for a while, just because you're trying to learn songs and you're trying to just get better at what you're doing. But I always say, start adding in your own style. I don't want to see you doing me. I want to see you doing you. And because the Lord has brought you into this ministry for a reason, He's trained you for a reason. He's given you this gift for a reason. And so over a period of time, as they get better at their craft, they can begin to bring in their own style and to be the musician or vocalist that God has taught them to be. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want them to be copying. I want musicians to be able to bring in their own voice and their own style of music. And I think that's where it's more fun. It's enjoyable for the whole team when you see people adding in their own style and just growing in the Lord, growing in their craft, and it just makes it a whole lot of fun to worship the Lord.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Really good.
Well, that's so good. And Rachel and Harry, we just love and appreciate you. And I know that you guys would willingly, just if any of our interns have any questions or, you know, want to follow up with you and just connect more with you as a leader and learn from you, I know that you guys would just be totally ready and available for that, because you have a heart for them as well. And and just helping them cultivate their gifts. And so we're just grateful for you guys. Love you a whole lot. And Rachel and Harry, do you have any parting words or just a final tip of advice you'd want to give to them? Anything at all?
Rachel, you go first.
I would say to the interns, keep your heart open. Like Rob said, it's okay to make mistakes. I've made many blunders. If God's put it in your heart, there's going to be a desire that is going to be a burning desire. However, don't let that supersede your relationship with the Lord. Keep yourself humble, keep your talents humble before the Lord is what I would stress. Because sometimes that can become an idol in your life. I know I've struggled before, and then all of a sudden I'm thinking, wait a minute, I have an attitude about something. It's not even, it's so minor. I need to be looking to the Lord and let Him guide my talent and so it's for the glory of God, not for the glory of myself.
Yes,
I would just say, yep.
Good.
Yeah, I would say just a caveat on that. Don't let your leading worship be your worship, and don't let your worship at church be your only worship, right? And this is, I think, it goes back to just the heart of worship in general, right? May your worship at church and leading and being on a team, on a platform, be the overflow of your worship at home, of your devotion at home, of you're going to lead better when you're in the Word, when you're engaging God off the platform, when you're praying and seeking Him. It's going to make you a better leader. It just does. That much more, because you're not doing it out of your own, your own gifts and talents alone, or your own abilities. You're doing it out of the grace and mercy of God, out of the Spirit moving in you, and just being in tune with the Lord even more. So just, focus on God, seek Him, and that's always first.
That's great. Well, we love you guys, and this will conclude our Q&A, and what a great blessing you both have been. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. Love you guys.
We love you.
Love you guys.
Love you guys.
Bye.